That's right, folks. This is Acid Roots, and this is the finale to Donkey Kong Country 3. So we're going to step into this particular mode and get towards this as far as that kind of goes. This is a nice little cutscene, and then we'll get to the credits, and that basically takes care of it. This would be part 26 of Donkey Kong Country 3. So this is the cap off to this series. There's definitely some good stuff. I do recommend, like, you probably should have finished up like your Munchies by this point, that type of stuff. The Pizza Hut, the Domino's, the KFC, some of those type moments, just the goodies, that sort of stuff. It's good for that. I mean, if you are having like some munchie sessions, if you've been watching this since like 1 o'clock in the morning and it's like 5 o'clock, you're getting ready to go to sleep, I understand, Holmes. It's one of those situations. It's about having some of those night sessions as far as that kind of goes. We're going to get rolled into the credits and just have the time here. We'll see all the folks that gave us a hard time. Just really look after it. So it's just kind of, this game is pretty snarky. I just would have to say this game, you know, it just happened to really roll out some of the devious kind of things as far as that kind of goes. I just didn't like the concepts about it, but I was just kind of like, hell, you know. This is probably the nastiest of the 3 Donkey Kong Country games. This would be the one where I would say I'd probably like. It's not to say I like it the least. I mean, this is probably like, I don't know if I said this before in terms of ranking it. I'd probably say this is about like an 8.5 out of 10 game. Where I feel like the second one is probably like 9.5. I mean, back in 95, 96, it was like a 10 out of 10 game. But now I'd say it's probably like a 9, just because that last boss is just a royal pain. It's just not. I mean, I feel like for folks who are adept at video games and haven't lost their skill set, it can be worthwhile to do. But once you get past like a certain age, like if you're 35 or 40 even or older than that, you can't still beat these games. It loses some of the value. I mean, it's okay to kind of play these games and just play as far as you want to get to, but it feels kind of demeaning to not be able to beat these games anymore. And that's the same thing I felt with this game. I feel like the score, you know, to derail from this particular game, I mean, it's a good game and it has some good moments. Definitely the levels in this game really have some craftiness about them, but I just would have to say a lot of this just had like a melded difficulty where they just ramp things up, and it's just such a lazy kind of offhanded difficulty ramp that just kind of, it's just kind of prick-like. This is something that'll piss you off, but you just have to kind of look after it and kind of say, I mean, it's not like full-blown brake controller kind of angry type stuff, but it's just kind of one of those ones where it's like, you know, this is kind of low-key pissing me off in those type moments. But you know, the first Donkey Kong Country, that's probably the most presentable. That's the one I would recommend the most to like casual folks, you know, just people who, you know, only play video games for like 30 minutes or something like that, those type of folks. I just would say that's the more affable game. It has the most vivid kind of atmosphere about it, just to be able to have some of that. It's just the simplest one. This is just more of a hardcore. Donkey Kong Country 2 is kind of in between, where I feel like that's just kind of more for you and like your classmates or co-workers or something like that, just being able to say that it's just a good one to kind of play once you have gotten to know folks more. It's just more of like a less formal kind of video game, but this one is pretty hardcore. I mean, just the stuff that's thrown in this, I went into this game back in 2022 thinking that it was just going to be a regular run-of-the-mill type thing, and it was going to be simple enough to beat, but this one proved to be the nastiest of the 3 of them. That just relatively happens to be the thing. It's really just the truth about it is this is by far the toughest one, and the thing about it is, I mean, it lazily ups the difficulty setting, but I still look after it just being able to say that it's not just like casual. And I feel like, you know, when I was able to do this back in 1996 and 1997, when I was 6, 7, 8, around that time period, it was just kind of, I mean, things have changed. That's just kind of the concept. I mean, playing games like Grand Theft Auto and Halo and those type games and Doom and, you know, Call of Duty and some of that type of stuff, it just, you forget how to play games like this. That's just kind of the concept about it. I mean, you know, back in the 90s, this was kind of like, it didn't make sense. I mean, people would make fun of you if you couldn't get to World 2 or World 3 of Donkey Kong Country or something like that. But nowadays, you just look after it as just like, you know, this is just a bunch of hokey. And this really kind of happens to be a thing about it. But Just kind of the concept. I mean, this is still, I'm glad to have this game completed on the channel. I mean, I was actually surprised I was able to get as far as I did, managing to beat every stage in this game minus the very last one, and really just up to like the very last segment. If I had just had like maybe in 5 or 8% better attentiveness just with being able to do it, I probably would have beaten the poisonous pipeline stage, and then I don't know if I would have beaten the final boss, but at least just did those were the last 2 moments. And that always happens. That's what I've noticed about these video games, is it's always that last boss that makes me have to bust out like the action replay and that type stuff. But this kind of happens to be a thing. I mean, for some reason, video games just always manage to crank out that difficulty as far as that kind of goes. That's why I didn't complete Prince of Persia. That still bothers me. I mean, I wish that I know I could have just skipped the stage in Prince of Persia, or at least done something like that, but I don't know. Certain video games, you can skip stages, but it just feels like when you have to cheat your way through. This is just one, kind of like Super Tennis, that just didn't feel like as much of a deal just because it's been an experience to play through, just because I can actually get far in this game. But with Prince of Persia, I get the feeling I probably would have used action replay like every stage. And the fact that you have to beat that game just in 2 hours, I mean, I think it's, they give you 120 minutes to beat 21 stages in the game, so you really have to know what you're doing. But yeah, this boss right here is just forget about it. I just was not interested in trying to figure out how to subdue this dude. But, it just kind of happens to be the context about it. But, yeah, so, I mean, this by far tells me that I wouldn't want to showcase like Nintendo 64 games or something like that. I just in no means think I would want to tackle like the Donkey Kong Nintendo 64 game or just other games like that. I mean, I would have to say at this stage it's just going to be strictly like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, PS1 type stuff, some of those type moments. But I just would have to say, I mean, I would almost occasionally think of throwing other things. I thought about throwing like the Game Boy Advance in there, but I just don't know what games. I really, the more I look after it, I feel like being able to beat some of these games is just becoming less and less likely, which is annoying, but there's just not really, I mean, that's just kind of the concept. And the fact that I don't own an action replay for the Game Boy Advance just means, this would kind of happen to be a thing. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely kind of a popcorn kind of playthrough. I mean, 26 episodes that you've gotten with this, just being able to say, watching this from the very beginning, you know, you could easily have several full pizzas. I want to say, I'm not for certain, I mean, not all of these are 14.5 minutes. This one's 12 minutes. But I just would kind of have to say and stuff. I still think this has to be at least a 4-hour playthrough. I mean, most people try to beat this game in like 2 hours. You know, you'll get the speed runs and the quickies and that type of stuff. But I really just decided to take my time. I said, you know, this is not a blind playthrough, but I would definitely have to say it's one where I'm just not in a rush. I think that kind of allocates the experience a little bit better for you to have like a more enjoyable time, just to have some beers too and that type of stuff, just with your buddies. You know, you go and buy 30 racks, something like that, get the pizza going, some of those type moments, just kind of real low key, that sort of stuff. Just play it cool like this cat right here, just being able to say, yeah, this really kind of happens to be a thing. I just look after it like. So yeah, there are more games afoot. I'm just trying to think of which ones that are necessarily going to happen. I want to return to Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, but I just can't convince myself to actually want to get through with that game. I know it's relatively simple, but it just can't keep my attention span at this particular stage. And I do have some other ones. I'm probably going to get to Super Mario World after this. That one's simple enough. That is one that I know just without restraint I can actually beat that game. That's the simple enough. Like that, it has like a true kind of adept atmosphere of like a difficulty as far as that kind of goes. Just me being able to say and stuff that beating Super Mario World is just not so much of a task. And it's the same thing. I mean, I could throw Yoshi's Island in there. I don't know if I will. It's not on the horizon, but I would almost kind of say that it could be. I mean, just because it is a pretty fun game. It's just one that would make sense. I mean, that would probably be about the same length as this game. I'd probably say about 4.5 hours. I wouldn't get 100% in that one, but if I could get like at least the 6 bonus stages, which I don't know if every playthrough kind of does that, but I would at least like to do that sort of thing. But yeah, that's just kind of the concept. So But yeah, I do have some games in mind. The fall is going to be interesting enough to kind of get some of these, just being able to say that. You know, been playing this game since 2022. It's kind of the concept about it. I mean, I look after it. I mean, I think that just has to do with the partialness about it. On top of that is just, you know, I mean, it's not like I talked over abundantly about the news and stuff, but you look after it, just being able, I mean, it's fun. I mean, most people beat these sorts of games in like, you know, like 2 weeks or something like that. I mean, that's like, there's just certain punctual kind of Let's Players that pride themselves on being able to beat these games. But this has just kind of been, you know, more of like a long, you know, more kind of lengthy and kind of more drawn out kind of atmosphere as far as that kind of went. So I just would have to say, but yep. So, yeah, just for me to talk about what I would score this game, I mean, that's just kind of thing. I mean, it is like a worthy just close off of like the Donkey Kong Country series, but I look after it, I mean, I just, like, for some reason this game just irked me. I mean, the first Donkey Kong Country really didn't. I was able to beat that one so easily, and the second one didn't irk me until the very end. But this one is just one that substantively kind of pissed me off just consistently throughout the course of the game. I want to say since at least World 3 or 4, that's how long it just kind of did it. And it just kind of felt like, I mean, it's a good game, but it just has the concept of just having more frustrations about it. It just kind of made it more of like a troll of a video game. This is kind of the concept. It's just, like I said, it's just for the hardcore. This is one, they just probably assumed that you were messing with the PlayStation by this point, and they just kind of said, and they call me a cheesy chimp. It's like, hey, y'all can get the middle finger, folks. Don't even give me that crap. But I just would have to say, so alright folks, that wraps up this playthrough. So I just would have to say, subscribe for more fun. Go watch this the whole way through. Get some pizza, that type of stuff. Subscribe for more fun. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you in some more of these.